Tim, thank you so much for coming into the studio today to talk about your race for Washington County Judge. I know a lot of people are excited to hear more from you. So before we get started, just kind of reintroduce yourself to our viewers and tell them about yourself and your race.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. We won the primary and the runoff, and now we've advanced into the general. It's kind of an interesting race compared to what we've seen in the past. It's drawing a lot of state attention. I'm facing an opponent who's well funded outside of Washington County. So I'm very excited for the opportunity to get here and talk.
Well, you grew up in West Fork. You spent most of your career here in Fayetteville. A lot of different experiences, I'm sure. So how has that shaped your view where we are in Washington County now, and how does that also influence your race?
So I grew up in West Fork. I've only lived in Washington County my whole life. So I grew up in West Fork, but then as an adult, spent almost 2 decades working in Fayetteville, living in Fayetteville, working for the Fayetteville Police Department. So I think it gives me a unique perspective growing up rural, poor, on a farm, seeing that lifestyle that's very independent, and then working in the urban area of Fayetteville, which is obviously a completely different world, but understanding both halves and those different types of people.
Yeah. What experiences would you say over the past, say, 20 years and your time serving in the Fayetteville Police Department really shaped you for this county judge race?
I think just being able to deal with people, conflict, opposing views, obviously Fayetteville is very politically active. Oftentimes they're very different than the conservative values that we have. But at the same time, I learned how to work with those people. I learned how to collaborate. One of the biggest projects I worked on was creating a crisis response team with blended social workers into the police response. I did that with the University of Arkansas during the kind of anti-police period of time.
What's that like?
Very difficult, but what I learned is I really believe Washington County is a lot different, and we have to maintain that. But people here care about their community, whether in Fayetteville, Springdale, West Fork, and we're able to find common ground and make that a very successful program that's nationally recognized.
Yeah.
And during one of the hardest times for police, and so just bringing people together and collaborating on common goals, I learned a lot about that.
I'm sure. You are on the Republican ticket, and as you know, and probably our viewers know, Washington County, especially this Northwest Arkansas area, we're a mixed bag, as you learned in the Fayetteville Police Department, and there are spots that are blues, more purple, some really red. So when voters are looking at the ticket and they see an R beside your name, what would you want them to know? Maybe some assumptions that they may have that may not be true.
Yeah. So first, I believe in conservative fiscal government. I just don't think the government solves every problem. And I think that's the one pushback I would have against some of the opposing views. But beyond that, this really should be a nonpartisan position. It's kind of unfortunate that it is partisan, because I have to represent all the people. I'm not running for a legislative spot where I'm, advancing laws. I mean, obviously there's ordinances and such and policy, but I have to represent everybody, even after this election. So I try to always we ran a really clean race. The last time I became very good friends with Mark Scalise. I've actually become decent friends with my opponent, Dana Deree. I think it's just part of it, but I don't think people should be scared just because they see an R, because especially in Fayetteville, because I love Fayetteville. I've worked there for 20 years. I graduated from the University of Arkansas. I have a lot of friends there. They're Democrats, Republicans, independent. My name is on the walk at the U of A. I am no enemy of Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I want to go back to, you talk about your upbringing in West Fork. I didn't realize this, but you said that you've only lived in Washington County. Talk to us more about, because you did a post maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about your upbringing, your family, what family life was like for you, that I think it certainly gave me a new perspective of you and your background and how you've gotten here. So if you would just take like a minute to share that, and really and what you're saying, like you're here to represent everyone here in Washington County, regardless of what letter they have beside their name.
Yeah. So I was adopted from an orphanage to a family that lived in West Fork. Obviously, we talked about that. Very rural, very poor. I even remember it was Interstate 540 at the time being built, because we would have to come into town, into Fayetteville, to go to the public library. I was homeschooled from 2nd to 10th grade. So I spent a lot of time at the library, which is part of, additionally, why I'm so fond of Fayetteville and what it does for us. My father worked for the University of Arkansas, non-faculty. So, just growing up and, struggling to get by. We were not well off, but I really value that now. And it's so interesting to me to be in this position at, 43 years old, where I come from that upbringing and could have gone a totally different direction, but now have a chance to take care of the people in my community that I really care about.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You have talked about Washington County being sort of like in two different halves. So you have the really explosive, urban, dynamic part of Washington County, and then of course where you maybe your family is now, or I know where my family is, a quieter, rural aspect of Washington County. Talk to us about those two different parts of Washington County and how you tend to lead.
Yeah, so there is a big divide. I think when people come here, naturally they see Fayetteville and Springdale because it's the epicenter. It's where all the amenities are for the most part, and they assume there's a lot of wealth here. But a lot of the wealth here is new wealth in my mind. There's still, if you drive around the rural areas, you're going to be shocked what you see out there. I was driving down a dirt road last week, and you see trailers that have sheets as the wall. And people forget that when they're only in Fayetteville, and they don't understand. Everybody complains about the roads in Fayetteville and Springdale, wherever, what state, what city, they always complain about that. But I feel like the rural area has been very neglected. I think it's on me to show the urban side, the issues we have in the rural area, because I think they need more attention. Because even the people that live in Fayetteville and Springdale, even specifically Fayetteville, because that's where I understand it the best, they are concerned about sprawl, the environment, all those things, but we need to actually pay attention to the rural area and protect them because this is a beautiful area. I mean, people don't, when you get outside the city, I was driving around the west side of the county last week, and it's amazing, and we do need to preserve that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Are you concerned, or when you look at the rural aspect of the county, infrastructure, water, like, what do you see there?
Well, so first, I think it's important. I could have all the ideas in the world, but I'm out there talking to people. And I don't actually in the rural areas hear a lot of issues with public safety, et cetera. What I'm hearing constantly is infrastructure, roads, planning, water, those things. That's all I hear about, mainly roads. But obviously water is a big issue as well. So those are the big issues that I hear about constantly. It's very concerning. They feel neglected, unheard. Obviously, last year was when they were trying to change the Freedom and Preservation Zoning Act, and that got people really worked up with how it was rolled out.
Yeah.
And they feel very pressured.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that in mind, there are lots of issues right now that people are talking about. It's kind of driving conversation on social media. One of those being just the protecting private property rights. And you talked about urban sprawl and that sort of thing. And anyone who's familiar with Washington County, I am from the Delta, but we were up here all the time. I had family here, and then I went to college here. You can just in the past few decades see how much it's grown. And so, how do you balance, making sure that we do have, opportunities for development and that sort of thing, but then also protecting what makes Arkansas and Washington County so special? That's a really fine line.
It's a very fine line because, before I started this race, I would have said that you can do anything you want with your property because it's how I feel about it. But what really drives that in my mind that we have to control is the infrastructure that supports it. If you don't have the water and the roads safe for the development, especially the high intensity development, we shouldn't be building that.
Yeah.
Because when I worked on the volunteer fire department in Wheeler, those water hydrants out there were not even rated to flow water for the fire trucks.
Wow.
So then if you keep adding development, you don't even have that piece solved, it's not going to work. And we're so far behind.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's just measuring those objective standards of can we actually support the growth where it is? Because we're going to spend way more money if we develop haphazardly and don't have those things locked up.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is that I see several conversations happening. I see, and of course, this was during the past legislative session, and the governor has had to, allocate additional funding for infrastructure, water needs all across the state. But then also you have certain entities and special interests, and even really, I would say, this current administration pushing things like data centers. And so when you're out campaigning, do you hear that concern from constituents like, man, I'm really concerned about a data center coming into our area. That was, I think, did the Fayetteville City Council do something about that?
Fayetteville did. They put more standards on what it would have to
Work.
be an industrial
Yeah.
park, et
So do you
cetera.
hear that from people?
So I hear data centers a little bit in the county, and it's more just skepticism about the pollution, the water, the electricity rates, you know. But really, what I've heard more is like windmills in the western side of the county. People have not wanted that.
Yeah.
I haven't spoke to anybody yet, and you know, I think it's important for me. Once again, I could have all the ideas in the world, but I need to listen to the people because you know, I'm going to be more of, you know, what do the people want,
Yeah.
whether I want it or not, and that changes over time.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing I hear about a lot is the windmills, and then also there's other issues I think we'll probably cover like flock cameras, which has been coming up a lot.
What is your stance? I know that it's a national conversation. It's made its way, you know, here in Arkansas. There are several, I want to say I've seen some city councils and JPs talk about it more in Arkansas. What is your position?
Well, I think so. Coming from a law enforcement background, you know, obviously, yes, it would help us solve crime in the law enforcement side, but there's always that balance between liberty and protection, and you have to. It's a fine balance. But what concerns me most about Flock is the AI that's built into it, the fact that those videos and stuff are going and being stored on a cloud server, and it may sound good now, but as those go all over, they're going to be able to track our movements anywhere. And I just cannot get behind that. I had an opinion about flock cameras long before I entered into this race. Yeah. I don't support it.
Okay. Another issue that is drumming up a lot of conversation, it's going to be on the November ballot, is issue 3. It's dubbed to create economic development districts. Of course, this would be something that I think, if passed, would certainly be utilized here in Washington, Benton County. It's pushed by the state chamber, Arkansas Association of Counties. What is your position on issue 3?
So I'm pretty pragmatic. I think there could be option times where it could be useful, but my issue is anything we do up here should have local control. And not only local control, you know, because there's the ability to appoint boards, but they have to be at have the authority of the quorum court, the legislative side. That way people, you know, there could be a great project out there that is wanted in the county. But the quorum court should be able to control and recall board members. We should have the final say as residents of what projects we do, not just because they flooded money in and it's an economic development type thing. Because there could be good options out there. We have to be open to that, but at the same time, local control is paramount. Nobody controls what comes into Washington County or should control what comes into Washington County besides Washington County voters and residents.
What's scary to me about issue 3, and we won't get into it, but is the fact that, you know, it has to pass on the ballot in November, and then the rules and everything is, you know, they're written in the next legislative session, which is in January. So it's really like, well, it's, you know, pass it, then we'll deal with what it actually looks like. And I don't know if voters fully understand that.
What I like is I think we have some really good legislators, especially up here.
We do. We
are going to. I trust them for the most part. I mean, I can't say I have personal relationships outside the Northwest Arkansas with the legislators, but I have a lot of trust for a lot of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something else that I want to get your opinion on, as far as in this particular race. Well, first, in the primary race, you unseated the incumbent on the Republican ticket by an overwhelming majority. It was over 77%. What did that tell you about where voters wanted to see the county go in the direction? And what was your takeaway from that? Were you surprised?
I was surprised a little bit. I think it's more of a cautionary tale for people running for office, honestly, because it was almost humbling to me too, because it makes it very clear that if you go in there and approach it in a certain way, people are going to recognize it. And it was actually kind of refreshing to see that because I think there's a lot of people disillusioned and think their vote doesn't matter and their opinions about what government is doing doesn't matter, but it definitely does, as we can see. Because, you know, I think we ran a good campaign, but it doesn't make up those margins. That is because of the incumbent.
Yeah. Your opponent now is Democrat candidate. And the thing that's been interesting to me, and we've reached out to him and his campaign, invited him on for an interview. Have not been able to secure that, but he's of course welcome. The thing about his race, one of the things that's interesting to me is that the state Democrat Party is all in on this race. And a lot of people see it as a state race, which I think is so interesting because it's a county judge. Why do you think they are really honing in on your particular county judge race?
Because of the economics of Northwest Arkansas, purely. We're a top 10 fastest growing metro. There's multiple Fortune 100 companies here. There's access to, capital for donations for bigger campaigns. It's a high value target that you would probably not see this in a lot of counties in
Yeah.
Arkansas, but you're definitely going to see it here. You're going to see it continuing, I think. It's probably going to increase.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned you're from West Fork. You lived here all of your life, and you are running a very local campaign as opposed to your opponent, whom he says it's a local campaign, but I couldn't help but notice a fundraiser that he had in Little Rock. It was like the who's who of the state Democrat Party. He also had a fundraiser here with hosting it, and was the Kentucky governor, Andy Beshear. So we talk about, okay, the state Democrat Party is looking at it as a state race, but then you see really national politics come into play. Does national politics have any role in this? How do you view it?
Well, I think as a party, we have our values, so that is important, and I think it's important that people know those values. But as far as this particular race goes, once again, it's not a legislative race. It's running your road department, your buildings and ground, your IT, all those basic administrative functions. Well, they're not really basic,
Yeah.
actually. It's how you run those programs and how you work with people. Because if I'm in a district that's red and I'm running as a legislator, I don't have to work across the aisle the same way. And I absolutely have to work across the aisle. So I would say it matters very little, or it should not matter
National politics?
in this race. I
Yeah.
don't think so. I mean, because I'm going to be judged on how efficient I run the county, the customer service, and do you feel like you're getting value for your tax dollars? And
Yeah.
that belongs to Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and because they should all feel like they're getting good value. Now they don't have to agree with me all the time, but do they feel like they're getting their money's worth?
Yeah. Something also that I've noticed is, and you have said, oh, I'm the Republican on the ticket. I don't really see that conversation coming from your opponent. And I think because, as you've said, this would be a good nonpartisan race. You do have to work across the aisle, but you still have to set yourself apart. So when you go and you are campaigning, what is it that you tell voters? Like, here are the distinct differences between me and my opponent. What would those be?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and it's kind of developed more and more as I've heard conversation that his camp is having, is actually knowing the history of how things came about, knowing the people, because you look at the zoning issue they tried to pass last year. There was no town halls, there was no communication with the rural areas, not nearly what it needed to be, and actually understanding the people, because another issue is this. Once again, you could have the county judge have the best resume in the world, but it's not a one-man show or one-woman show. You're going to have to work with people and have advisors that have expertise all over and bring people to the table. If you can't bring them to the table and have trust, we're not going to get anything done. And I think that's what really sets me apart from my opponent is that I can go into the rural areas and I know people there and I know the communities, I know the background, and the same for Fayetteville and Springdale. I know the background, I know why certain operations that we have came about, even if they're not popular. And I don't believe that my opponent knows that history.
Yeah. You are having a campaign a lot right now, and I think I've seen you at multiple events. I just saw you recently at the Lincoln Rodeo, which was a lot of fun. Talk to us about the campaign trail, how those conversations are going. What do you want people to know stepping away from this?
No, I mean, I want them to feel heard. I've tried to be the most accessible politician ever. I have been giving my phone number to anybody and everybody and trying to meet as many people. If one person wants to meet me in Cane Hill, I'm going.
Yeah.
And, obviously that's taxing, but some of those meetings have turned into some of the most insightful and best meetings I've had. I feel very lucky to have people reaching out wanting that, and it's really increased since the runoff, and that's a great
That
thing.
is a good
And
thing.
people want to be heard. They want to feel like, I mean, they want somebody in this office that they feel a connection to, that feels a connection to Washington County, and that is accountable to Washington County. One of the big things about being from here is if I go in there and do stuff that's unpopular or become kind of a tyrant, I'm going to hear it from my mom, my family, and I mean, hundreds of people that know me,
Yeah.
and they're going to hold me accountable for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Um, So for them to get plugged into your campaign and to reach out to you, I don't know if you want to give your cell phone number here on camera, but from now until November, how can people get plugged in, donate, volunteer,
Yep.
talk
So
to
our
them?
website is votetimshepard.com. I don't mind giving my number, 479-287-1151. Just please be understanding if it takes me a little bit. And I know this is, I've been told don't do that. And I've been told it's a big mistake to do that. But I really want to connect with people. I want people that that maybe are uncertain about voting for me, but who will operate in good faith conversation. I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
I want to come out and talk to their neighborhood, do front porch stuff. I'll talk to them on the phone. But I do ask that it's in good faith. If you don't want to vote for me, that's fine. Please don't waste my time.
Yeah,
But I'm sure I get some of that too.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you feel like we haven't covered or you want to talk about that you'd like to mention?
No, I just think this is a very important election. It's not normal. I think Washington County, with the growth that's come to Northwest Arkansas and the fact that there's been a lack of long-term planning here, is at a critical crossroads. And when you've grown up here and you see the growth, and that the growth is good. I am not anti-growth. I am just very concerned about preserving why people are moving here. I'm not against people that are moving here from outside. We want them, but I even think the people that live in the urban areas that maybe don't think about the rural areas should be concerned about it because they may want to live out there someday. And I think I know people that live in Fayetteville that have a dream of living on 3 or 4 acres out in the county. And while you may not care right now, you may care in the future. And if you drive around, it's I think we're living in the most beautiful county in Arkansas. I really do. I love the hills. That's something that a lot of places don't have. It's amazing. And with the growth that's coming, if we don't have somebody that can work across the lines and understands the community and get stuff done, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
We really are.
Yeah. Well, Tim, really appreciate you coming in. Good luck on your race, and hopefully we can have you back on before November.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.